A look at 4 ways the war in Ukraine could end. Russian win. Ahead of Russia's invasion, many Western intelligence assessments predicted a quick Russian victory. That did not happen. Ukraine mounted a strong initial response with highly motivated fighters and weapons from countries around the world. For Russia to win now, it must follow a more difficult path. Russian troops have attempted to capture major Ukrainian cities, but struggled after finding them already heavily fortified. As a result, Moscow shifted its strategy to focus on Ukraine's eastern Donbass region, where pro-Russian rebels have been waging a separatist rebellion.
If the Russians try to make a big push to surround the Donbass, that could be very difficult for Ukrainian forces to keep fighting in the way that they have been fighting. And it could make things difficult for resupply efforts by the US, NATO, and other allies as well.
If Russia were to try to capture major Ukrainian cities again, including the capital Kiev, it would mean using ever more powerful strategies, including airstrikes. This would result in more civilian casualties. Russia has significantly more troops than Ukraine, as well as more weapons, giving it a large military advantage. Ukraine prevails. For Ukraine to prevail on the battlefield, it would need to earn victories against a much stronger Russian force. Military analysts say that to hold the capital, Ukraine might have to give up smaller cities. Ukrainian forces could continue to mount armed ambushes and attack Russian support lines, hoping to force a stalemate that leads to a Russian withdrawal.
And what Russia is doing so far is not really a pullback that shows that Russian forces are going to go home, back to Russia. In fact, what the US suspects is that the Russians are clearly just repositioning and regrouping, refueling, resupplying, and getting ready to go and attack Ukraine some more.
More likely, Ukraine could prevail through the combination of military successes and worldwide pressure on Russia. Russia is suffering from both economic sanctions and diplomatic isolation. The war could end with a diplomatic solution, especially if Russian ally China exerts strong pressure on Moscow. Another way Ukraine could prevail, a remote possibility, is if Russian President Vladimir Putin were removed from office. This would likely require ordinary Russians to revolt against the war, or elites to carry out a coup. Protracted quagmire. Even if Russia could capture Ukraine's major cities, an easy victory would not be assured. Ukrainian fighters could engage in a drawn-out insurgency that would last months or even years. Insurgents could dig deep into cities and hide on rooftops, in alleyways, and inside buildings. A well-coordinated force, armed with weapons from the West, could hold off a large assault for a long time. This could result in a stalemate. Such a conflict could lead to mounting casualties on both sides and wear away Russian resolve. This outcome would mirror Russia's fight in Afghanistan in the 1980s. It is not clear what Putin's goal is for Ukraine. If he wants to install a pro-Russian government, he would likely need a Russian occupation to support it. Such an occupation could also face prolonged armed resistance and lead to a protracted quagmire. Wider war. The worst-case scenario would be an expanded war that brings in other European countries. Such a war could involve several nuclear-armed countries. It could escalate quickly and lead to catastrophic outcomes. For these reasons, European countries, the United States, and NATO have been careful to try to keep the conflict from escalating. They made clear they were not in a war with Russia and ruled out sending troops. They also rejected the idea of a no-fly zone over Ukraine because it could lead to the downing of Russian planes. A wider war could still be unintentionally triggered by a series of missteps. It is also possible that Russia could intentionally escalate the conflict if, for example, it was facing defeat.